almost uninterested to bring this guy's name up, but I'm asking you,
It's Stephen A.
because
Smith. I know that's what it is.
the reason why is because you sometimes moonlight. Folks may not know this. You're brilliant analysis, politics, but you sometimes moonlight in sports commentary. But Stephen A. Smith, I'm not gonna play the clip. Made went on a rant on
This is Stephen A. Smith, folks. I mean, here's another video, and this is one Clay Kane show. This guy is he's a liberal guy. He talks about politics. And this is a great one. He's undercover Republican. And this guy here, this other guy he's talking to, I forgot his name. Oh, hold on, his name's in the comment. No, what's his name? Let's say this guy is. Stephen Smith, Doctor. Oh, Dr. Jason Johnson. Okay, this guy is it. He's a political scientist. This guy is he's on CNN before, I think. And he's also been on I think he's been on ESPN or sports. He's been on or some sports podcast. I think he's been on ESPN or another. I'm thinking. He does sports too. NBC, ABC. I think ESPN he's been on before. Or Fox. Maybe he's been on Fox. If he commented, I don't know if he commented on football. We're talking about Stephen A. Smith. And he said he's really a Republican. Let's see. Here's the T. He's spilling the tea on Stephen A. Smith.
Joyanne Reed, and criticized those using race as an excuse of the reason why she got fired. Mind you, I haven't heard Joyanne Reed screaming racism. I have not heard her say it. It's just ridiculous. But brought up her rating.
It's talking points with the Republicans. And she's a race baiter, just like Jason Whitlock. Race baiter. I mean, call anything a race baiter. If you stand up for black people, you're a race baiter. Oh God.
And I've covered this. She was number 7, and there were shows that had worse ratings that didn't get canceled and so on.
Yep.
I'm just curious what you think, because his voice.
She's talking about Joe Reed, and she's saying that there are shows on there that have worse ratings, and they weren't canceled. Just like Joe Scarborough, he probably had worse ratings. I probably think, or just as bad, and he wasn't canceled.
Is becoming so just louder and louder, and anybody can run their mouth, I guess. But I think about there's a lane that he has, and I don't know if he's good in that lane either. I don't know the sports lane. I don't know, but I just wanted to know your thoughts on. He seems really in a fever to get more involved in political commentary.
So I want to be absolutely candid about this. I don't know Stephen A. Smith at all personally. I interviewed him maybe once or twice years ago when I was working for The Root. Stephen A. Smith is a quintessential example of the difference between being influential and being known, right? Stephen A. Smith is a very well-known person. When he speaks, people pay attention. He has no real influence. I want to make that clear. He has no real influence in politics.
Huh.
He desperately wants to have influence in politics. He desperately wants to be considered amongst the same spaces as a Roland Martin or a Bakari Sellers or an Angela Rye or a Tiffany Cross or Abby Phillips. He wants to be in that category. He wants to think that he can actually move the needle. And he is being platformed, unfortunately, by a lot of less than informed journalists who are bored and looking for someone who's making loud noises. But let us be clear about who and what he is at this particular point, which is just a loudmouth person who is desperate to be put into different spaces. That's the first thing, right? That's not an insult. Hey, if he hears this, fine. He can't. I don't really care. He doesn't have any influence on my life. There's not a politician alive in America who's making their decisions based on what Stephen A. Smith says. Even if Eric Swalwell decides to bring him to Washington, D.C., I've met Eric Swalwell. I'm a fan of his. Eric, don't waste your time, because Stephen A. Smith doesn't represent anybody other than himself and the small number of Republicans and Republican acolytes who are friends of his. And that's the second thing I want to point out. This man is best friends with Chris Christie. He is a Republican. Stephen A. Smith is a Republican.
Folks, he's a really Republican. Chris Christie. But they could say that, oh, they're friends. You can say that he's friends with everybody. But I agree with you. He's more of a so-called Republican. And he seems to, although I think he has criticized Trump, he seems to criticize the Democrats more.
Look at the pictures of him and that crazy human rights abusing police chief, right? Look at all the opportunities that he always takes to attack the Democratic Party. And the issue that I have with him, besides the fact that he's not informed on any of these issues whatsoever, before I even go back to the mistakes he's made in journalism, before I go back to his well-documented history of inappropriate, tacky, and crass comments about women, in particular black women, before I even get into any of that, I will highlight the fact that Stephen A. Smith is a Republican. And he is too much of a coward, and I will say coward, intellectually and personally, to just admit that on the air. Because the moment that he says he's a Republican, then he can no longer play the game he's playing now, which is, oh, I'm just a Democrat who's disappointed, and now people will pay attention to me. Just come out. Just come out, Stephen A. Smith, and say you're a Republican.
That reminds me
of grift. It's the grift. It's your book.
This reminds me.
And I want to make this clear, because as all the people who are talking about Stephen A. Smith running for president, that guy's not going to run for president, right? And the best way to handle this kind of grift, the best way to handle this kind of disingenuous nonsense, is to ignore him. So what that he goes on Bill Maher? Bill Maher has lost credibility with the vast majority of substantive journalists in this America 8 years ago.
Yep.
Right? He is a right-winger who's angry because his old comedy routines from the 90s making fun of Muslims don't go over so well at Berkeley anymore.
Yep. Bill Maher is I don't say he's MAGA. He's almost like a MAGA. He's almost like MAGA now. I mean, he's a bit of a bigot. He's kind of a bigot. Yeah, he's a bigot. He's kind of a bigot. Islamophobic.
It's some new material. Okay? Stephen A. Smith is trying to slowly navigate himself into legitimate spaces in journalism so that he can appear to be credible, so that he can use that to sort of leverage himself against ESPN, which is a dying network like a lot of other things on cable are dying.
Yeah.
Listen to him at your peril, Democratic Party, because this man knows nothing. Yep. He represents nothing. He is not in contact with a certain segment of the African American population, and he is making bad faith assessments of the Democratic Party because he is not a Democrat. And I'm not saying that as somebody who is a Democratic fan. I'm saying that as somebody who actually cares about this country and not my own personal self-aggrandizement. And I also say this as somebody who actually understands politics.
Yeah, you're very critical of Democrats. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I don't have any loyalty.
Yeah, these guys are not, they're not really shills. They probably support Democrats, but they criticize the Democrat too, this guy. I've seen the show before. He's critical. Well, actually, one time I saw, but he's critical. He's critical of Democrats. I think you're right. I think his word for it. And you can tell he's not a Democratic guy. I don't know if maybe he votes third party. Who knows? But he's not like in love with the Democrats. And maybe he didn't vote. Maybe he didn't vote, or maybe, right? Who knows? Maybe they didn't vote in the election. Who knows, right? I don't think they're Democratic shills, per se. They probably would vote Democrats, but they're not totally in love with the Democrats. You can tell.
The Democrats, Republicans, I have none whatsoever. Yeah. I feel the same way. Yeah, these kinds of voices, the way they get platformed, it's just, but it's an old school formula.
Yeah,
I just think it's ridiculous, and I mean, if you feel that way, leave Joanne Reed out of it.
Well, but you know what the deeper thing though, and this is where I have the problem. It's him, it's Marcellus Wiley, it's Jason Whitlock, it's the whole crew.
Yo.
All of these people.
Yep. Marcellus Wiley. Yeah, they're like, he's more of a conservative too, and Whitlock is a Republican, definitely.
You remember in the late '80s, early '90s when you suddenly had all of these actors who wanted to sing, right? And I say this as somebody that when you become prominent and successful in one space, you often have a desire to move into another, right? Rush Limbaugh had already conquered talk radio, but he really wanted to get into sports, right? Rush Limbaugh getting that job on Monday Night Football was his dream come true. Here's the difference, though, and people can find this insulting, but it's actually true. Sports is entertainment.
Yeah.
So my opinion is just as valid as yours as long as I look at the stats. But politics affects real people's lives.
Yep.
It's policy. It's the health, future, and protection of this country. So if I'm an opinionated person in politics, like I am a professional legal analyst, I'm a professional political analyst, I'm a host, I have a PhD in political science. The fact that I have sports opinions is fine because it's entertainment. But just because you've conquered sports doesn't mean you know a damn thing about how this country works, how this country can be saved, and what this country needs to do. And people need to understand that being successful in one area doesn't mean you can ice skate in another.
Yep. There you go, folks. What do you think about that? And you mentioned Rush Limbaugh was terrible. So that's one example there. He's right. Rush Limbaugh was terrible. He didn't go on to say that. Rush Limbaugh was terrible. And they had to get rid of him. He said something about Donovan McNabb, the quarterback, something racial, and they had to, I think they had to get rid of him. Stephen A. Smith, he spills the tea on him. This guy's a political scientist, he's an expert, he knows. And this guy, Stephen A. Smith, is a fraud, he's kind of a grift. He wants to, he's not going to run. I agree. But he wants to be a political commentator, and he wants to, and it's kind of another grift. Like it's a grift he wants to make more money, I guess. So it's kind of a grift. But anyways, folks, what do you think about this? He spills the tea on Stephen A. Smith. But folks, what do you think about this? I'm out.